For centuries, towering stone walls and heavily fortified keeps were considered the ultimate impenetrable defense against any invading army. However, brilliant military commanders and ruthless engineers eventually developed devastating technology designed specifically to crush stone, shatter gates, and bring these mighty strongholds crashing down to the earth. Today, we are looking at the gritty reality of medieval warfare as we explore 10 siege weapons that made medieval castles useless. When you imagine the ultimate siege engine, you picture the counterweight Trebuchet. This gravity-powered artillery piece was an engineering marvel that revolutionized the battlefield. Utilizing a heavy box filled with earth at the short end of a pivoting beam, the Trebuchet violently whipped the longer end forward, launching enormous projectiles with terrifying velocity. These colossal machines hurled boulders weighing hundreds of pounds, smashing into walls with enough kinetic energy to shatter solid masonry. The psychological terror inflicted was unparalleled. Defenders trapped inside could only listen to the creak of timber before watching a massive stone arc through the sky. During the siege of Stirling Castle, King Edward I commissioned a gigantic trebuchet named the Warwolf, which was so intimidating, the garrison attempted to surrender before it was fired. While the trebuchet rained destruction from above, the battering ram delivered blunt force trauma directly to the castle's weakest points. The concept was brutally simple, yet devastatingly effective in combat. A massive timber, often an oak trunk capped with solid iron, was suspended by chains inside a wheeled wooden frame. Dozens of heavily armored soldiers gripped the handles, swinging the trunk back and forth to build terrifying momentum. With rhythmic, thunderous strikes, the ram repeatedly smashed into heavy oak doors or iron portcullises, splintering wood and buckling metal. To protect the brave men operating this machine from boiling oil, rocks, and arrows, the ram was enclosed in a fire-resistant canopy covered in wet animal hides. This protective shell allowed attackers to relentlessly hammer away until the gates finally collapsed. When shattering walls was not an option, commanders had to go over them, utilizing the towering menace of the siege tower. Also known as a belfry, this colossal wooden structure was a mobile fortress designed to bridge the vertical gap between attackers and battlements. Standing several stories high, these behemoths were slowly rolled toward the castle walls on massive wheels. Pushing a siege tower was a grueling task, requiring the sheer bravery of the common soldier to advance under relentless enemy fire. To prevent defenders from incinerating the tower, the exterior was draped in raw, wet animal hides. Once the tower lurched against the stone walls, a heavy drawbridge dropped directly onto the battlements. This sudden action bypassed the towering defenses entirely, allowing a dense column of shock troops to pour out. Before the counterweight trebuchet dominated the battlefield, the Mangonel was the premier rock-throwing engine of the medieval world. Unlike gravity-powered engines, the Mangonel relied on the immense power of torsion. Its throwing arm was inserted into a tightly twisted bundle of ropes, or animal sinew. When cranked down and released, the extreme tension violently snapped the arm forward, hurling heavy projectiles in a flat trajectory. This made the Mangonel incredibly effective at battering lower walls and smashing defensive hoardings. However, commanders quickly realized the Mangonel was the perfect weapon for psychological warfare. Armies used them to launch a horrific array of payloads over the walls, hurling flaming pitch, severed human heads, and the rotting carcasses of diseased animals. This terrifying tactic was designed to spark fires and spread deadly plagues. While catapults provided indiscriminate area damage, the Ballista delivered terrifying precision. Functioning essentially as a gigantic mounted crossbow, the Ballista was a torsion-powered weapon that fired massive iron-tipped bolts with devastating accuracy. This weapon remained a crucial asset in medieval sieges due to its incredible penetrating power. The heavy bolts traveled at extreme velocities, easily punching through wooden mantlets, shattering defensive shields, and skewering multiple armored soldiers in a single strike. For a besieging commander, the Ballista was the ultimate sniper rifle. They were strategically positioned to pick off defending archers on the battlements or clear the walls of enemy troops before a major infantry assault. The psychological impact was profound, as the sharp crack of its release was instantly followed by brutal impact, leaving no soldier on the walls feeling safe. No weapon altered the course of military history and rendered medieval castles obsolete quite like the Bombard. As the earliest form of gunpowder artillery, the Bombard represented a terrifying leap forward in military technology. These primitive cannons were forged from thick bands of iron or cast in solid bronze, featuring enormous barrels capable of firing gigantic stone balls. The introduction of the Bombard completely changed the complex strategy of siege warfare. Previously, reducing a heavily fortified castle could take months of starvation and bloody assaults. With the Bombard, towering stone walls could be reduced to rubble in days. The sheer concussive force was unlike anything medieval soldiers had ever experienced. When these massive stone spheres slammed into traditional vertical walls, the masonry simply shattered, ending the castle era forever. Often overshadowed by larger siege engines, the Springald was a highly specialized and deadly piece of artillery that played a vital role in attacking fortifications. Constructed within a heavy wooden frame, the Springald utilized two separate inward swinging arms powered by tightly twisted skeins of animal sinew. When tension was released, the arms slammed into a central sliding block, propelling iron-fletched bolts forward with extraordinary force. Unlike the arcing trajectory of a catapult, the Springald fired its projectiles in a flat, direct line, making it exceptionally accurate over medium distances. Besieging armies used Springalds to systematically dismantle the wooden defensive structures built along the tops of castle walls. Furthermore, by attaching pots of Greek fire or flaming pitch to the bolts, attackers embedded burning projectiles deep into wooden roofs, creating utter chaos. As fortifications evolved to withstand early artillery, combat engineers developed a dangerously intimate method of breaching castle gates known as the Petard. This weapon was a primitive, shaped explosive charge consisting of a heavy, bell-shaped metal container packed tightly with highly volatile gunpowder. The tactical application required unimaginable bravery from the soldier assigned to deploy it. Under the cover of darkness, or amidst the chaotic crossfire of an assault, the combat engineer had to sprint directly up to the castle gate. They frantically secured the heavy explosive device against the thick oak doors, lit the slow match fuse, and ran for their lives. When the petard detonated, the bell shape directed the explosive force forward, violently blowing the reinforced gates off their hinges. However, a fast-burning fuse could instantly vaporize the engineer. Sometimes the most devastating weapon against a towering medieval castle wasn't a machine built on the surface, but a dark tunnel dug deep underground. Siege mining, or sapping, was a complex strategy designed to completely undermine the structural integrity of the massive stone walls. Teams of incredibly brave miners dug an extensive network of tunnels, starting safely behind their own lines, burrowing blindly beneath the battlefield until they were directly underneath the foundation. As they excavated the earth, they supported the massive weight of the stone walls above them with thick wooden timber props. Once perfectly positioned, sappers packed the subterranean chamber with highly flammable materials, including massive quantities of rendered pig fat. They set the cavern ablaze, and as intense fire consumed the supports, the massive stone wall violently collapsed. While heavy artillery was essential for smashing walls, an attacking army also needed a weapon capable of providing a rapid-fire barrage to keep defenders pinned down. Enter the traction catapult, also known as the perrier. Unlike the trebuchet, the traction catapult was powered entirely by the synchronized pulling force of human operators. A team of soldiers stood at the base of the machine, gripping multiple ropes attached to the short end of the throwing arm. On the commander's precise order, the team violently yanked the ropes downward, whipping the long end forward to launch the projectile. Because it did not require the slow process of winching a heavy counterweight, the traction catapult boasted an incredibly fast rate of fire. A well-trained crew could unleash a continuous, devastating rain of heavy stones. The evolution of these terrifying siege weapons proves that no matter how thick the stone walls were built, human ingenuity and the relentless drive for conquest would always find a way to break them down. Which of these devastating medieval siege engines do you think was the most terrifying to face in the heat of battle?